On August 12, 2015, Bloodbath would be verified and become the hardest level in Geometry Dash. 10 years later, as of August 30th, 2025, Bloodbath is the 644th hardest demon with just over 2,900 completions on record. Today, the hardest level in Geometry Dash is actually, Thinking Space 2, verified by...
Sirs and madams, you're both mistaken. Illusion of Hell by X.
Who is that guy? I just wanted to quickly start this video off by saying if you guys enjoyed this video, consider subscribing because I would love to get monetized soon because this video took me 8 months to make. Anyways, back on topic. Will grief be the human limit? Hot take, but I think grief, once verified, will be the human limit. Assuming it's the hardest level out of all of these other monstrosities. Because whether or not you think Heliopolis is harder, Cockmock Unleashed, Silent Circles Reborn, Silent Acropolis, what is going on here? Where's the gameplay? But at the end of the day, there can only be one top one new hardest demon in the game. One human limit. So here's why I think it's grief. But before we get to grief, we gotta look at everything beforehand to really understand just how big of a jump grief really is. Here's a list of every top one in the game. I'm going to graph out each verifier's attempt count starting at 1.9 because prior to 1.9, attempt counts were not being kept track of in-game. However, one player did keep track of their attempts. Popomon, verifier of both Rhythm Time Machine, which according to this video, he verified in 2 attempts, and Pink World. Looking at the screenshot that Popomon sent, they claimed that beating this level took about 4,000 attempts. Allegedly, because I cannot read Korean. With that being said, let's skip straight to our first 1.9 top one. Acropolis is what I would say if Zobros actually told us how many attempts it took. So unless Zobros decides to come out of his 7-year retirement while I'm editing this video, I guess we'll never know. Are you serious? Tell us your attempt count, Zobros, if that's even your real name. Anyways, second top one of 1.9, Necropolis. This is Geometry Dash's first top 1 attempt count. From the start of 1.9 to the end of 2015, we saw a total of 6 different top 1s, with Bloodbath being the hardest level at the end of 2015. The highest attempt count at this point was Giron. I want to be completely honest, I have no idea. With over 31,000 attempts on Cataclysm. Obviously, attempt counts don't define difficulty, as we can clearly see. Moving on to 2016, the hardest level of the year was Sonic Wave, and the highest attempt count was also Sonic Wave. Again, attempt counts don't define difficulty, but it will help us find a pattern. Of the 9 top 1s, only 3 of them were verified with less than 10k attempts, and 2 of those were verified on 144 Hz. Stormfly's the goat, I guess. 9 years later, everyone knows that higher refresh rates equals more consistent ship, wave, and overall just makes the game better. But back then, this was all new. So players playing on higher refresh rates were able to make levels revolving around their best game modes. Whether or not they knew at the time that their monitor was making them a better player, we may never know. But what we do know is that by 2016, we would see the last top 1 verification on 60 Hz. It would also be the last year we see a top 1 verified on mobile. Fun fact, Bloodbath would be dethroned by that very mobile level. Goes to show that in 2016, players did not fully grasp the power of high refresh rates. Because by 2017, players had begun to understand just how big of an advantage 144 Hz truly was. Hence, top 1s became extremely wave and ship carrying. Unfortunately, of the 3 top 1s from 2017, I was only able to find 1 attempt count, which honestly, I think perfectly shows just how much of a jump in difficulty these levels had become. 110,339 attempts. That is more than triple the amount of attempts than Sonic Wave. Going into 2018, we see something that has never happened before in Geometry Dash history. Only 2 new top 1s, with Crimson Planet breaking Bloodbath's seemingly unbreakable record of most days as top 1 by 64 days. That's almost a full year with no new top 1. Unfortunately, this became a pattern, because by the end of 2019, we only saw 2 new top 1s. Again, with Zodiac remaining on top for 248 days. And again in 2020, this time Tartarus breaking Crimson Planet's record of most days as top 1 by 12 days. Quick update. With recent allegations of Dolphy possibly hacking Tartarus, among other allegations, and also being banned from Point to Crate, I will be considering Mosley's completion of Tartarus as the official verification from this point onwards, meaning Tartarus was verified February 9th, 35 days later, only to be dethroned by Braden Bold Perot's Blind Blizzard. Although Blind Blizzard may look significantly harder, Tartarus was verified almost twice as many attempts as Sakupan Realm, which is why it towers over almost every other level's attempt count. From 2015 to 2017, we saw 15 top 1s. Compared to 2018 to 2020, that is a huge decrease in verifications. And worst of all, huge pillars of the community begin to quit or slowly step away. People like Boldstep, Chris Credible, C1997, Combi, and Swish, and many, many more. It felt like the end of the Extreme Demon era, and on to the Entertainment era! But that era has long since ended.
Ever feel a need to crack a cube?
Long since ended. So what really happened? How did we go from Tartarus to grief? Well, I might have forgotten to mention something that happened back in 2017. The FPS bypass. From what I could tell, not a single top 1 was verified with the FPS bypass up until 2020. And that's because Pointer Crate, the official, unofficial way to rank demons back then, had completely banned any levels and completions using the FPS bypass. But on November 25th, 2020, Pointer Crate officially lifted the ban on the FPS bypass, which eventually led to many bypass haters finally changing their minds. Wow. So with the FPS bypass being more widely accepted, 2021 went on to have 5 new top 1s, with 3 of those likely being verified on the FPS bypass. By 2022, every top 1 was more than likely verified using the FPS bypass. Again, I can't say for sure, but with everyone playing at 360 FPS, I think it's a safe bet. This brings us back to present time, where the past 3 top 1s have all been verified on the FPS bypass, attempt counts being at all-time lows, with Avernus being verified in less attempts than Phobos, Sonic Wave, Crimson Planet, and many more. And finally, how does this all tie into grief being the human limit? Well, looking at this graph, we can divide it into 2 sections: before and after high refresh rates. By the start of 2017, 144Hz had completely eviscerated 60Hz. But more importantly, we also had a rise in new players. By the end of 2016 and into late 2017, Sonics completely dominated the list with back-to-back top 1s. Sonics had accumulated 297 consecutive days as a top 1 verifier. For context, that's longer than Bloodbath's record of 262 days. And Sonics' reign of top 1s was only dethroned once a new, albeit lesser known, 144Hz player began competing against him. And as more players began to take advantage of the higher refresh rates, we began to see more and more unique verifiers. From 2017 to 2021, we saw 12 unique verifiers out of 14 top 1s. Braden Bold Pro with these invisible abominations, and Sonics. However, at the end of 2022, we would see Zoink's very first top 1 verification. And since then, he has verified every single top 1, not including buff tidal wave. Between Acheron, buffed Acheron, Avernus, and tidal wave, Zoink has accumulated a grand total of 950 consecutive days as a top 1 verifier. That is 653 days longer than Sonics' previous record. Luckily, if history has taught us anything, it's that as soon as the list becomes dominated by one player, either new competitors will emerge or a new program. So why grief? And why do I, a nobody, think that grief will be the human limit? Looking at Doggy's current attempt count compared to everything else on this graph, let's just say, ring a bell? Further, Doggy is the only player to be playing on native 480 FPS. And that's thanks to his $1,400 monitor. Grief money, am I right? Although it's not against Pornocrate's rules for a player to use more than 360 FPS on the bypass, not many players choose to. But, some do.
I beat the Robert of the Week! Holy sh!
Is it because the difference between 360 and 480 FPS is negligible? Maybe. Will native 480 Hz be the next step? I don't know. Finally, the last thing I've yet to mention, which I bet most of you have been yelling at me about. Click Between Frames, the game-changing mod that makes Bloodbath the same difficulty as Stereo Madness. To my mom who made it this far into the video and doesn't know how CBF works, let me explain. If you're playing GD at 60 frames per second, your icon will take 60 steps forward in 1 second. The issue with this is that whenever you click, your input won't be registered until your icon takes its next step. Therefore, playing on lower frame rates leads to larger steps, aka less accurate inputs. So initially, this was solved by playing on higher frame rates. The problem with this is that no matter how high your frame rate was, or how small your steps were, there was still a small input delay. So, what Click Between Frames does is no matter where your cube is on its step, you'll be able to click between it. Get it? So, lo and behold, Doggy is using CBF to verify grief. The only issue being is that RobTop hates Click Between Frames. Doggy even offered to RobTop that he would find someone to program in CBF for him.
I'm not gonna lie, bro. I tried to do something to get Rob to hire people to add CBF,
And RobTop still denied it.
but it didn't really work out. So I don't know why he said he was gonna hire people after 2.2, because he's not doing that.
Who even knows if we're gonna get Click Between Frames as a built-in feature? I do! As of January 19th, 2026, RobTop added his own version of Click Between Frames. Click Between Steps! And it sucks. Although I don't have the technical ability to explain why, I do have the ability to show you. Here's what my auto clicker looks like with Click Between Frames on, and here's what it looks like with Click Between Steps. Hence, why Doggy's still using CBF for grief. Unfortunately, this does mean that grief is very unlikely to get rated, and that other players will likely avoid using CBF for their own verifications, out of fear of not getting rated. One final thing about Click Between Frames is that many creators have actually made their levels significantly harder, or just straight up impossible if you use it. What other so-called hack was hated by the community for making players better? But who knows if grief will really be the human limit. Maybe RobTop's version of Click Between Frames will actually be really good, and it'll inspire hundreds of thousands of other players to blast through that skill ceiling. That's if it ever gets better. Or maybe a level like Heliopolis will get verified sooner than expected. Till then, at least grief will be at the top of my list. Really, you're calling me right now, bro? What do you want? VSC? No, it's already on the... Twice in a row? Oh, God. $1,247,822. That's basically 4 times the grief attempt count. VSC, once considered the hardest challenge ever, has been beaten twice in a row. Although I have no way of knowing where this would place on the current demon list, as it's not even on the current challenge list, one thing I do know is that Geometrash players are some of the most persevering people I've ever seen. If Nev can actively play this level for 5 years straight, where most of her attempts likely look something like this, what's stopping someone else from dedicating 6 or even 7 years on a level that's currently considered impossible? So, will grief truly be the human limit? Yes, I do think so. But that's only if the entire GD community quits and RobTop shuts down the game for good. I don't see that happening, at least anytime soon. So, I'll be waiting here, patiently, until grief gets inevitably dethroned by the next seemingly impossible level. Goodbye.